a big thing is to improve my lung health.
Sitting there with a cup of coffee thinking, "Oh, I don't want to train," and you'll say, "Are we on the bike then?"
Looking forward to my first race. I'm definitely 6 months into it. I feel like I'm addicted.
So we were going to talk about something we spoke about recently, and then afterwards we said it's probably a good enough conversation that it was a shame nobody else could get the benefit of it. And that sounds a little bit
Full of it.
self-aggrandizing, doesn't it? But I don't mean it to be. It's just that it was a good conversation. So we
It
thought
was.
we'd kind of revisit it and have a go and see if there's any value for anyone else. And it was around what the expectation is before one embarks on a fitness journey, and does that align with the reality. I think your experience is the most valid here because you've had a bike now for a year. You've seriously been training indoors on the bike with structured training and consistent regularity for what, 6 months?
Yep.
What were your expectations of what that would feel like and what the experience would be versus what it has been like? And what would you tell somebody that was about to embark on it, what to expect?
You're going to have to remind me of the second part of the question.
I know, the whole interview in one sentence.
Maybe the first part as well. But wait, so I started this journey a year ago,
Yeah,
but it was a bit more start and stop, illness, whatever.
yeah,
And then in earnest, it got picked up in December.
yeah,
I think then I decided every week I was going to start hitting the bike, the trainer, maybe 3-4 times a week.
yeah.
So what was part two of the question again?
Yeah, so it was about what did you think it was going to be like doing this, and what has it been like? Is there a difference between what you imagined it would be like versus what it has been like?
Um, Easily answered. I didn't have any expectations that I would be able to keep at it as long as I have,
Yeah,
because I've done these other sort of shorter fitness programs, and at the end of, say, 3 months of strength training or HIT training or whatever, it came to a sudden halt, and then it was hard to keep up that momentum. But it's self-directed,
yeah,
I feel, and Zwift directed,
yeah.
and Garmin directed as well.
Yeah, that's an important bit. Maybe we can circle back to that, the Garmin element.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of kept me going. Just seeing the fitness gains I've made with the technology,
Yeah,
that's been encouraging. And then I'm a bit competitive anyway, so I just want to
yeah.
keep on doing well.
But just for the benefit of anybody that's listening to this, and obviously they don't know you and they don't know me, describe what your state was prior to embarking on this fitness journey. So I think like it'd be fair to say if I kickstart it, most of us, myself included, had kind of had a couple of years of being on pause through COVID. And I know for me, my fitness had basically shrunk to, you know, almost to being a beginner again after a couple of years of not really paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Talk us through what it was like for you coming into this in earnest 6 months ago off the back of a bit of a pause.
Yeah, it was really like starting again, because preceding that I had COVID and other health ailments, and I'm asthmatic, so it really sort of set me back in terms of my lung capacity. I just felt like I was wheezing just going up the stairs,
Yeah,
and it was horrible. I mean, for someone who walks around at 50 miles an hour, my normal pace, it was hard to slow down because I was having to catch my breath and things
yeah.
like that. But yeah, I was really determined to get that lung capacity back. I just kept telling myself, use it or you're going to lose it.
I,
Yeah.
I remember throughout that period as well that you had a lot of questions that you were asking yourself about, was there something wrong? And I kind of recognized, because I'd been there myself, that when one loses fitness and then tries to do it again and nothing's working as it's expected to,
Mm-hmm.
the natural thing to jump to is that there's something wrong, rather than I'm unfit and this is what being unfit feels like.
Yeah, so this, prior to taking up bike and bike training, I had kept fit with, brisk walking or running.
Yeah,
And then the running had to come to a halt because of knee issues. But with running, every time you stop for a while and then when you start again, because I was way younger, you know what it's hitting. It sort of hits, your quads and you feel it there.
yeah,
And it's just a matter of a few days you feel fine, then you keep going and then voila, you're fitter in a few weeks. Um, but with this, it was a new thing, I would say. So there was a several different aspects. It's the first time I tried to train in a consistent manner,
yeah,
focusing on zone 1 and 2 training, which, if you'd asked me before, I'm more like I prefer to just sprint and, just be a happy dog, kind of that kind of training.
yeah. You like the HIT stuff, don't you? The short, high intensity, get
Exactly.
your quick fix and go.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly. So it's the sort of slow and less intense stuff takes
mm,
a lot of patience. So I think there was a bit of training for me there as well to just kind of rein it in and
yeah,
understand that these were going to help my overall long-term fitness goals
yeah,
in terms
yeah,
of, I think, lung and heart health and just, fitness in general, and that, in between I could intersperse the training with sprinting and whatever else.
yeah, yeah. The building of an endurance base is, it doesn't come overnight, does it? And it's not easy. It takes a lot of time and a lot of consistency. But without that foundational base,
Hmm.
everything else you do on top of it kind of doesn't really work, or it doesn't give you the payback that it should for the effort you put in.
Hmm.
So I would say, having probably put myself through this umpteen times in my life now, with fitness going up and down, and life getting in the way
Yeah.
occasionally, that the first brick to lay is your aerobic base, and that essentially is a good, depending on where you're starting from, a good 8 to 12 weeks of low intensity, long rides or runs or whatever it is you're doing. And without that in place, everything else you try to do afterwards just doesn't work.
Yeah, so this was something that was new to me, this low and long, low intensity
Mm.
patient training. I would say that within a few weeks I felt the difference. I recently also had pneumonia, and I made sure that I got on the bike despite it. I had this horrible cough, as you'll remember, and but we did very low intensity training throughout. I just did, I can't even remember how long, but I felt good during it. I stopped coughing during the training,
Yeah,
which is quite miraculous. And then afterwards, I felt good, and I was like, if I feel good and watch isn't saying, look, stop training,
yeah,
it doesn't know that I'm sick, of course. But at the end of the day, I think it helped me to kick the thing, helped clear my lungs and stuff. So,
yeah.
yeah, that was good as well. I want you to answer the same question on how did you feel starting out, restarting again, and were you expecting the results that you've gotten within what 3 6 months?
Oh, yeah. Two very good questions. So whenever I allow my fitness to drop and then I get back into it, I'm always disappointed with myself. I never get disappointed with anyone else, but I'm severely disappointed with myself, and I give myself a hard time emotionally over that for a long time. You know, that I've allowed that to happen when I've worked so hard to achieve it.
Yeah,
I've said,
I did see that. I didn't say anything because I just thought it's okay. I mean, what can we do if you feel like that?
yeah, exactly. And you know, you'd think I'd not be stupid enough to repeat that process, but I have done many times. Um,
It's life, isn't it?
it is, yeah. Um, and I've said this before, that if we think about investing in our physical and mental well-being like we would invest into money,
Yep.
stopping and starting, doing short-term 12-week plans and programs that charlatans on YouTube and Instagram sell us, it's no different than throwing our money into gambling or some other short-term thing and expecting to have a lifelong pension out of it. Never going to happen. It's never going to have that long-term investment and return kind of mechanism to it. I think we have to change our mindset to a long-term investment into ourselves for this to work.
Yeah.
The moment we try and think short-term, it just falls apart.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so disappointed in myself if I allow the investment to stop. It's kind of like having a pension pot and just stop paying into it for 2 years and then realizing 2 years down the line, what am I doing? I should be paying into my future. It's a bit like that. What was the second part of the question?
It was the difference between your expectations and where you find yourself after 3 or 6 months.
Yeah, I've never been disappointed with the results within 6 months of training, because I think 6 months is a decent enough time if you're consistent that you really will see some benefit, really objective and subjective benefits there. But
Yeah.
I've seen bigger gains in the 6 months that I've been consistently training than I've ever seen in any prior 6 months. And I think that's because we just have better access to better information now than we've ever had before. There's so much more that's known about nutrition. I mean, when I go on a long club ride, I eat and consume so much more energy during the ride than I've ever done historically. And I can feel that's having a significant impact on my performance. And so, yeah, this 6 months has been a bigger leap than any 6 months return in the past.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I have to say that prior to now, you know, working out as a person in my age, advanced age.
Yeah, we should say that we're in our 50s.
We are in our 50s.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for people to understand we're not 21-year-old athletes. We're two regular people in our 50s with the usual life commitments that people have.
Exactly, exactly. And juggling work and trying to
Drinking
find the
coffee.
time to, yeah, trying to find the time to keep fit in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, the feeding of the fitness, that part I had never done before.
Speaking of which, I'm going to have some cake while you
Exactly.
while you tell
Well, I
this
think we
story.
worked hard this morning,
We
so
did. Yeah.
we deserve it. Yeah, and I think it's made a difference definitely because prior to these past 6 months of training, I don't think I paid attention to fueling after a hard workout or even before.
Yeah.
And I notice, of course, with your watches these days, you can tell by your training readiness and things like that. And maybe even your sleep. I'm not really sure, but whether you're recovering well.
Yeah.
And I had not been recovering well when I didn't pay attention to the nutrition as well.
Yeah.
Even though I was eating, cleanish and whatever. But I think just I'm actually eating a bit more, I would say, these days. But feel like I'm getting fitter, losing, blubber, fat, whatever. And yeah, so despite eating more. And I think
Yeah.
it's made a difference. I feel much better afterwards. I'm not sort of like struggling after a long session.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple of things to unpack there. First bit is, do you think that people primarily embark upon a fitness regime because they're trying to lose weight? Do you think that's the biggest driver of why people do it? And if it is, I'm guessing I'm leading the question here. If it is, are they then eating less? Like, are they trying to combine a reduced calorie diet, for instance, with upping the fitness training?
I think it's hard for me to speak for other people and what motivates people to work out or whatever. But definitely people our age suddenly are jolted awake by sudden worries about sarcopenia, losing muscle mass,
Yeah,
and all the other risks of health. Just from a sedentary lifestyle, sitting at a desk, and then suddenly you're at higher risk of heart and other ailments.
yeah, yeah.
And just inactivity, I think, is they know that that's also a risk factor, and I feel like that pushes people into
Yeah.
the fitness thing. As for whether they are paying attention to the input of food versus output in terms of activity, I don't really know. But I mean, obviously, it makes sense
Yeah.
to pay attention to that if you're trying to lose weight. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm definitely in this thing to lose weight partly, but a big thing is to improve my lung health and fitness overall.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely 6 months into it. I feel like I'm addicted to the bike trainer, and looking forward to my first race. And yeah, so it's a good thing, probably, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. So while I'm eating another piece of cake, second part of that question, or second part of what you said, was
Yeah.
about the Garmin watch, and I suppose there's many makes of these smartwatches out there. Apple make a great one, and
Hmm.
Wahoo and various companies, not just Garmin, but wearable smartwatches that monitor our health and our sleep. What sort of impact do you think that's had, if any, on how you've trained? Is there value to it?
100%, I would say there is value to it. Um, I did have an Apple Watch, prior to the Garmin, that had all the heart data as well. For some reason, I feel like I wasn't really geeking out over the details. Has it helped? Was that the question?
Yeah, is there value to having a smartwatch that monitors your health and gives you some sort of, well, certainly a window into what's happening on the inside, but also as well, like the ones that we're using now, we're getting actual guidance about, um,
What sort of workouts to
yeah,
do?
it's telling us literally,
Yes.
hey, I recommend you do this today.
This is true. I used to ignore all of that advice before. But then because of a GCN program, maybe I was encouraged to maybe try and follow it, because in that program, the person who followed the advice appeared to improve his fitness levels.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
I'm just going to correct for the film here. It wasn't GCN.
oh, sorry.
It was Francis from Cade Media. Francis did it for 30 days and saw a bump in his FTP at the end.
Mm,
But yeah, it was. We watched it together, didn't we? And we we hadn't even really explored that aspect of the watch, and it kind of turned us on to having a go, didn't it? And
yeah,
we've been doing it now, well, for more than 30 days. I think we've been following the watch almost religiously for probably 2 months or more.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I check it every morning. In terms of how it's changed things, I would say I do pay attention to whether I'm ready to train or not.
Mm,
And if I'm not, I sort of look at the details of why I'm not, and then it tells me, oh, you haven't slept enough. This is the first thing
yeah,
that was apparent to me, is that I'm not paying enough attention to sleep quality.
right,
So I have to say that I started to take action to minimize stress, and all of the other zillions of things that can occupy your mind even when you're trying to sleep.
mm,
And exercise itself is helpful,
yeah,
but now before going to bed, I try and go up a bit earlier. I try not to look at my phone too much,
yeah,
unless it's about cats or something relaxing. And yeah, that was a wake up call, I think, the
yeah.
sleep aspect
No
of it.
pun intended.
None.
It's an interesting and I think valuable aspect of the smartwatch.
Yeah.
Not just that it can tell you your heart rate, how long you slept, whether you slept good or bad, what your HRV is, and that, but the fact it can collate all of that information, and an algorithm somewhere spits out what you should do today for training based on what you've done thus far and which state of recovery and health you are currently in right now. And we've even noticed, haven't we, that it will tell us what we should do tomorrow, and then you wake up and it's changed it entirely based on how you
It
slept.
has.
And I
This is
love that
true.
aspect of it as well, because prior to having that information, I would have just set myself something to do tomorrow, and
And done
irrespective
it.
of how I slept, I'd be doing that.
Yes. And to be sure, sometimes I still, you know, if it's, for example, recommended that I do some sprints today, but then when I wake up this morning, it's changed its mind because I haven't slept well enough. And then it says, no, do some low intensity, long training instead.
Yeah,
And then I might actually decide, if I feel okay, to ignore that because of, however it is, it fits into your schedule. If I'm working the weekend or whatever, I just need my own fitness schedule to also
yeah,
fit into my natural weekly rest days.
yeah, yeah. Well, and also the fact that you just refuse to be told what to do, so you love just doing your own thing, don't you?
Not all the time. I do listen some of the time.
No, but it's valuable. I think we both agree it's helped, and I did an FTP test before I did it, and I did an FTP test after. I don't know. I didn't. I don't remember how many days, but it was at least 30 or 40 days, and I got a significant bump, which was a pleasant surprise because most of the training for me had been quite lower than I would train, lower intensity than I would have naturally trained, and yeah, I got this significant bump in FTP, so that was good.
Amazing.
And I wasn't feeling burned out. No, burned out's the wrong term. Too severe. But I wasn't feeling fatigued throughout the training. I was never waking up the next morning thinking, "Oh, my legs are, they feel terrible. I couldn't possibly train today." It was always keeping me within a healthy range where it was recoverable in short order, and you can go again and keep consistently training. And I think that's the key to this, is it optimizes your ability to train consistently.
Yeah.
It's course correcting overnight, as we were saying, in a way that perhaps you wouldn't as an individual. You just
Have you
wake
ever
up.
ignored its advice?
Oh yeah, yeah. Of course I have.
Okay, so it's not just me.
No, 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 no. Definitely not. I've ignored it. Yeah. I usually ignore it in the opposite direction to you, though. I might think I've got a heavy schedule of work today,
Yeah.
so I won't train. I'll have a rest day today instead of, it might have scheduled me one for 2 days time, and I might take that rest day today so I can work. Whereas you're more, I want to work harder at training, so I'm going to swap out the rest day to do some interval training. So I think we do it in opposite directions. But yeah, I'm as disobedient as you, I suppose. Yeah, I think something we were speaking about the other day as well is, and I want to focus a bit more on this because I thought this was quite important. I think both of us have been caught in the past by the promise of a quick fix, and you end up following a diet or a training plan, and you usually have to pay people for something
Yep.
to be part of it. The special sort of plans that are only accessible once you've paid your money and you join a cohort of people online and you're all in it
A
together. And
cult.
a cult, yeah, a Kool-Aid drinking session.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it all sounds plausible. We've both done things like that. It is plausible, and it doesn't work, does it? It works in the short term, but it doesn't work in the long term.
Yeah, this is true. I think that's why this um, following my own path with the bike training, my own path with a bit of help from both Garmin and Zwift
Yeah,
has been helpful. It's more sustainable. It was less, I've done exercise programs in the past where maybe a HIT program, short term, and sort of led by some sort of former Marine or something.
yeah,
And then, which led not just me, but other people into injuries, serious injuries, rotator cuffs and stuff like that,
yeah,
which told me very quickly that this person wasn't trained, properly in
Yeah.
physiology and whatever.
Yeah.
I think sustainability is definitely something you have to think. It's something you can keep consistent with and do on your own. I think
Yeah.
as well is helpful. I mean, for many people, they join the group exercises because they like being social,
Yeah.
and it's helpful sometimes when you're doing yoga or whatever. But for me, anyway, this is working.
Yeah. It's always better when well, I think it is better when you're training with somebody else.
Yeah,
I know people that don't like that and they only like training on their own, and of course that's fine, whatever works for the individual. But I think
yeah,
most people respond better and are able to be more consistent if they've got someone or some people to train with. If there is a commitment to we're all going to meet at 8 p.m. at the gym to do X, even if you come home from a hard day at work and you would on your own think, oh, I'll miss it tonight, I'll go tomorrow. When you've got a commitment with other people, you're more inclined to go. And we see that with each other, don't we? We'll wake up one morning and I might have had a bad night's sleep and I'm sitting there with a cup of coffee thinking, oh, I don't want to train. And you'll say, are we on the bike then? And I feel, there's a commitment there that we've agreed this together. So I get up and I do it with you. And within 5 or 10 minutes of being, turning the pedals, I'm awake and energized, and it
that's true.
solves all of that prior problem.
Hmm.
But I would never have done that without commitment to you to
Yeah,
do it, And I've seen the same in reverse. You've had your days where you thought, oh, I feel a bit tired. I might not do it today, and I say, come on, let's do it. And you've performed some of your best sessions in those moments.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, I suppose you never know.
Yeah.
And it is helpful doing it with a partner, yes.
But going back to what you said about some of these kind of boot camp style sessions, and I don't want to pick on them, broad brush and say they're all bad because they're not. I actually know someone that started up one of the big organisations in the UK, and fantastic knowledge and fantastic organisation.
Yeah,
But there definitely are the charlatans out there, and that's the thing, that if you're new to this, how do you sort between the good organisation that will look after you and the charlatan that is standing there in military fatigues with biceps and big shoulders, and you're looking at them thinking they must know what they're talking about. How does one figure that out? I mean, it's not easy, is it, when you know nothing about it and you're trusting
no.
people, and as you say, one wrong thing and you can end up with a injury that's going to take you out of training for a year.
Yeah, 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 there's that. And, many of these charlatan types, let's say,
Yeah,
they're being helped along with social media. And because of that, they can sort of tailor make their program to look miraculous. Look
yeah,
at all these people who look fantastic after 2 months, and,
yeah,
that kind of thing.
yeah.
And then I think,
It's
I
tempting.
admit I was tempted.
It's very tempting, of
It
course.
lured me in for sure.
Yeah.
But then, before I found out, it wasn't exactly for me.
No,
It's not like they're not there to look after everyone. They're there to pick up their check at the end of the month,
the business for them,
or
isn't it?
or
It's
the
not.
3 months. Yeah,
Yeah, they're not your friend. They're
they're
not your
not.
personal coach. They're there to run a business, and it's a numbers game, isn't it?
It is a numbers game, and when you run into problems sometimes, and if you bring it up with them, they'll just do this shoulder shrugging, and then that's the end of it. Now I'm accountable for myself. So I think that's, I like having the control. And then, I like that we are able to discuss our own fitness journeys.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so a much more sustainable and happier path.
yeah, yeah. I think another thing that's probably worth talking about is, when one does reach a certain age, you can get very fit. Strength is one of the last things to leave the human body.
Yeah,
It's mobility and flexibility
yeah,
and the ability to rebound from things that goes first. And I think it's important that we choose the right type of training that reflects that. If one goes into a new sport or a new training thing with lots of dynamic movement, explosive movements, sudden changes of direction. These are the things that middle-aged bodies are not conditioned for, and we've lost some of that advantage, and you're putting yourself at a higher risk of injury.
Yes, and in fact, we know, just to interrupt you for a second,
Yeah.
how long it takes us to just get warm. Sometimes it's 20 to 30 minutes
Yes.
before we feel fully, you know, all supple in the joints or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good point. I remember I used to keep a running diary before iPhones and before the internet. Pen and paper. I used to keep a running diary, and I remember that. So when I was in my late 20s, it used to take me from leaving my door on a mild day. We're not talking about a winter day. You're talking about a mild day. It would take me 8 minutes before I was fully warmed up, supple, able to run at whatever pace I wanted. If I wanted to do sprint intervals, fine, I'm not going to injure myself. Now, as you just rightly said, 25 years later, it's a minimum of 20 minutes, but it's realistically more like 30 minutes. And that's okay as long as you know it and you can work around that, right? You can avoid the injuries. It's when you don't know that you jump into a high impact class with someone that doesn't know you, maybe doesn't even
A
know how old you are.
25-year-old trainer.
Who knows? Maybe they don't know what that feels like, right?
Yeah.
And they're getting you doing high impact, high dynamic range things immediately. Maybe after a 4 or 5 minute warm up, your body's not prepared for it or conditioned for it.
No.
Bam, that's it. You've got an injury. It's not the guy at the front who's going to be out of action for 3 months. It's you.
No.
He doesn't care. It's really important we look after ourselves, and as you said, we're accountable for ourselves. And it's really important that we have the confidence to say, and I've said this in a martial arts class in the past, they did their set warm up and they wanted to get straight into sparring. And I said, I'm just going to stay at the side and carry on warming up for another 10 minutes. And there was sniggers and laughs because I was the oldest one in the class. But rather that than be out of action for a year with a torn
This is
rotator cuff. I'd rather be laughed at than injured.
Yeah.
I'm regularly laughed at. I don't care. But injury,
I think
everything that you've worked for goes down the drain.
that's another difference about trying to get fit um, at the stage of life we're in now, is that we are trying to be better informed.
It's a surprise to me that you or me or anyone would be surprised that it's going to take a good few months to get conditioned, adjusted, comfortable to any sport that you're going to undertake for fun. But I think with cycling, there's something weird that goes on, and I remember myself going through the same process where we think you should just better sit on one and ride away, and it should all be okay. And as long as you can stand over the frame, it fits. And that we know that's not anywhere near the reality. The reality is there's 3 points of contact on a bicycle: your handlebars, your pedals, and your seat. And that is supporting your very unique individual biomechanical frame.
Yeah.
The bike manufacturer didn't make it for you, didn't make it for me, didn't make it for anyone specific, right?
No, no.
And yet we expect as beginners to be able to just get on it and ride away and feel fine, and be able to go and do all day riding and get off and not feel any
I think
discomfort. And
this
that's
was the
mad.
expectation always, because I was a very late learner of bicycling because I didn't have the chance to learn as a child. And so, when I first learned, I must have been 25 or something.
Mm.
And it was easy. I picked it up quickly. But then there's a whole universe of skills involving balance and confidence and all of that
Yeah.
people who learn as children will have picked up naturally,
Yeah.
which I didn't have.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now,
Mm.
having gone through that uncomfortable phase, how would you shortcut that for someone beginning now? If a lady or a man, but particularly a lady, maybe of similar height and build to yourself, said, I'm thinking of starting cycling. What should I get? What should I do? What's it like?
Well, yeah, that's very important. I think that someone who is not of average stature or whatever, I'm petite, so that get sized properly for the correct bike. And even then, I think you could go to a normal bike shop and have the wrong advice. I'm sure someone
Definitely.
thought that a small bike would be okay for me.
Yeah.
And yet the one I'm riding on is an extra small, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think still it's possible that I could be.
You could possibly be a double XS.
Yes.
Depends on the make, because they're all different. And that's another important thing. Just like clothes, a small in one make is not the same as a small in another make. So it's important to get it right at the beginning, where it's within the range of tolerance of our individual bodies.
Yes, exactly.
I think you and I didn't do this, but I think we would do it if we were going and buying bikes again, which is to forget the bike shop. They are not experts in biomechanics, and nor should they be. But you need to go to someone who is.
Get proper fitted.
Get
Yeah.
proper fitted, and then take those measurements and transpose those onto the manufacturer's website and see which bike fits you.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you said, what would I tell somebody who's a complete newbie, who is an adult and a woman?
Yeah.
Is it's like fitness. It's learning to bike and continuing with it. I think takes stick with itness, because initially it's going to be uncomfortable. Your seat's going to be feeling uncomfortable, and so you've got to fix those things if they're fixable. But then after a while, your body sort of gets used to things as well.
The most constructive thing we could probably say is it probably will be uncomfortable when you first start, but the difference between it being uncomfortable and the bike is wrong and this is always going to be uncomfortable, you're not going to know at the beginning. So get some advice from someone that does.
Yep.
Someone qualified. A proper, decent, qualified bike fitter can save you months and hundreds of pounds. Yeah, I've known people in the past that have got into biking. They bought themselves a nice high-end bike, spent a lot of money, bought all the kit, only to find out, several months later, it's the wrong bike. It doesn't fit them, or they don't fit it, whichever way around you want to look at that. It can't be. That's it. That can't be changed. It's now sell that bike and start again.
Terrible. That is really
That's
tragic.
not unusual.
Yeah, and bikes aren't cheap either.
No, you're going to lose
nice bike
more
is not
doing
cheap.
that than what it would have cost you to have a bike fit. So what's the essential kit? What's the bare minimum essential kit for somebody that wants to train indoors on a bike? We assume they've got the bike. Now, what's the rest? What should they get?
I think definitely appropriate biking shorts. And I've already been down this road, maybe with other sports as well, where I sort of cheap out and get something, thinking, oh, what if I don't stick with it? And then usually I stick with it and say tennis or whatever. And then I decide, oh no, what am I doing wearing this crappy thing? And then I get something that suits me in other ways.
Yeah.
So it's the same with the bicycle. Initially I bought something that was cheaper. It wasn't 100% comfortable, but then and then I upgraded a bit, and the difference in comfort is huge.
Yeah.
Also in terms of fitting you better and things. There's certain brands that might fit women better.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's individual, isn't it? Because we're individuals, so there's no way we can tell anybody, oh, you should wear those.
No, exactly.
Bit of trial and error, and it might cost a bit of money, but the compulsory, mandatory things is a good pair of cycling-specific padded shorts.
Yeah.
Obviously, no underwear. The pad needs to be next to our bodies. It's doing a job, other than comfort, it's doing a job of keeping our skin dry and not being chafed. What else does one have to have?
Initially, I found it useful to have some fingerless gloves.
Yeah.
But then once I got used to my handlebars and everything, I find that I'm not really getting calloused as much, so I'm okay at the moment without. But definitely a good helmet.
For indoors?
Oh yeah, they're not for indoors. Sorry, and I've clearly fallen on my head. And some nice wicking tops. I don't think they need to be bike specific if you're training indoors, but yeah.
Yeah. I would say the absolute essentials for training indoors is a fan.
A fan.
Yeah, a fan. And I wouldn't even say cycling specific shoes even at the beginning. You can train in just regular trainers with
That's true.
regular
Which I did.
flat pedals that the bike will come with. That's, you know, that's fine to start
Yes.
with.
But
But
since then, I've switched to clipped pedals. Is that what they're called?
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, there was definitely a difference because again, I cheaped out on the shoes and they were so uncomfortable. They had no give and my feet were being squeezed.
Yeah.
And then after I changed to a properly sized pair, yeah, the difference has been like night and day. Super comfortable.
Yeah, I echo that. We've both been down that same journey, haven't we? So proper bike specific, oh, covered in crumbs. Proper bike specific. Do that one again. Proper bike specific shorts.
Uh-huh.
A fan,
A
because there's
fan.
no airflow indoors that you would get if you're riding outdoors, but you're working as hard as you're working
Yep.
outdoors. A water bottle at least.
A water bottle.
Definitely need to keep hydrated working indoors.
Yeah. And obviously, if you're working with a trainer, you need a sports watch. Is that true? Because you need to monitor your heartbeat.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think most people, or many people, have a watch of some sort nowadays, don't they? Like an Apple Watch or something. So they've probably got that covered. That will probably work with
Okay.
the training software that you choose. Probably Zwift or something similar, but Zwift is the most popular one that most people would go to first.
Yeah.
And then you need an indoor trainer, often called a turbo trainer
Yep.
or a smart trainer,
Uh-huh.
that you usually, but not always, but usually just remove the back wheel of the bike and bolt the bike to this turbo trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Super easy. And then the turbo trainer measures what you're doing and sends that information to your whatever you're using to view your software, whether it's a iPad or a computer or your Apple TV or whatever it is you're using. You need that bit of kit at the back, and that's probably, you know, other than the bike, that's one of the biggest investments, because, you know, they're not cheap, are they?
No, they're
A
not
smart
cheap.
trainer is upwards of, I don't know, I think you can probably get them brand new now. I think the cheapest ones are about £300 or £400.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a chunk of money. You're
Uh-huh.
trying to start out and do this all in one go. You know, you're buying a bike, you're buying a smart trainer, you're paying for this Zwift or other software stuff. A pair of shorts, at least one, and you've got to wash them after every single use because they're
Yeah,
next
so
to your
at least
body
two,
and
I'd say.
bacteria build up. So
Yeah.
you probably need at least two pairs to train through the week. And water bottle and a fan, you're already, you know.
Playlist.
Yeah, playlist is essential. If you buy a fairly inexpensive bike for, you know, sort of £300 to £500 ish, you pay a similar amount for a smart trainer, then a couple of pairs of shorts as well, a fan and a water bottle or two. You know, you're quite quickly getting well north of £1,000 just to try something out that you're not sure whether you're going to stick with.
This is
And I
true.
think that
This
is,
is true. Might be worth getting a second or third hand trainer and
yeah,
or even trying out your friend's one.
that'd be ideal if you've got someone you can do it.
See.
The only danger with that is that bike might be set up for them, and you might get on, and that
Yes.
feels terrible,
That's true.
you know.
That's
But there's the second-hand market, the used market, is a really good place to start. You're absolutely right. Going back to what you said earlier about, you know, with kit in other sports, you buy as a sort of entry level stuff, try it out, think, oh, I like this, I'm going to get the good kit. So that stuff gets put onto eBay or, you know, some other platform where it can be sold, and you can get some really good entry level bargains there
Yep.
to try a sport out. And I think that's worth doing just in case it's not for you. All right, well, I think we've pretty much exhausted this one.
I think we have
Yeah,
exhausted everything except my last bit of cake.
that's prompting me to stop because we've got cake to eat. So that was a great conversation, and yeah, we'll come back with another one once we probably walking around the kitchen start talking about something and think this sounds good, and then we'll do another one of these.